This podcast can be found on Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Hello and welcome to the Paper Prototypes podcast. I'm with my guest James, who is the dev behind Cruel. James, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your game?
Hi, I'm James. I've been a software dev for, over a decade, and I decided I'd quit my job, work on games, and that was a year and a half ago. And I've released my game now, and I'm kind of just continuing updating it so far. Uh, is that good enough?
Oh, that's fine.
I haven't really thought about this that much. Yeah, that's all I can say, really.
Tell me about that transition. What was that like to leave a somewhat, I guess, maybe stable job to pursue the wacky world of indie development and all its ups and downs?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a crazy ride. Um, in my mind, I thought it was going to be. I really didn't know what it was going to be like, really, because I guess the comfort of having like a job that's stable, income coming in every month, it's very comforting just to know, oh yeah, I know I'm going to be able to pay the bills and the mortgage next month. Um, but then sort of leaving that behind and taking a step into the unknown with my money as well. Uh, it was scary at first, but then it just became normal after a couple of months. Uh, yeah, so I think scary at first, but once you've taken the plunge, it's like jumping into the sea. You you think, oh, it's going to be absolutely freezing, and it is for the first couple of seconds, but then it kind of washes over and you're fine.
So, did you have Cruel already in mind when you took this plunge, or was it just kind of like, I want to make games, hit the quit button?
Yeah, so I think it was a year before quitting my job. I took about 3 weeks off of work just to do a little prototype, just to test my game idea out and see if it's something that I'd enjoy doing. Um, and I posted a little clip on Twitter, and it did very well. So I was thinking, oh yeah, I guess people seem to like this. I quite like doing the whole level generation part of it. I think it's a go. So I did have the game design in mind before I quit the job.
Gotcha. And what were the inspirations behind designing Cruel?
So my sort of elevator pitch was I wanted an old school FPS game, but I wanted the levels to be procedural. Um, and so it was kind of looking at the old games like Duke Nukem, Blood, um, and some of the new ones like Iron Fury and Dusk, and just trying to get a grasp of how could I get those levels to be procedural. Um, which sort of took a bit of a turn to more of an arcadey game, as I soon found out that level generation is quite hard to do. So getting that precise detail in of what all those old maps have versus what's actually achievable within a year's worth of development. So a lot changed over the core design the more I worked on it.
And at what point did you decide you wanted to add basically the building burning down so players are forced to charge constantly throughout the level?
Oh my god, yeah. So my initial game design is basically just to push the player to move along the level. The first design was actually just the whole floor would have been on a timer, and you would collect the cans and feed them into like this wall mouth thing, kind of like the trash chutes you find in buildings. Um, and that would restore time for you to progress. But what I found out, sort of playtesting that, was it's a bit frustrating if you run out of time in between those shoots, or when you're in the middle of the level and there's no way to get that time back. and you already know you've lost a round because the level time has reached a certain threshold. It was a little bit frustrating. So the inspiration behind, getting the fire in place, dates back to, I think it's like a Super Mario level where they just like move the level across just to push you to keep moving forward. Um, and at first, I made it like this black gooey stuff that sort of appears, and the ghosts spawn out of that goo stuff. But then I found through playtesting that people didn't know that the black goo was dangerous at all. So then I thought, well, everyone knows fire is dangerous, so I just changed it to fire instead, and that seemed to work.
So when I do a lot of research, I'll read other people's perspectives on the games, and I saw people were talking about yours in the same conversation. They were bringing up something like Mullet Mad Jack, where there's a timer where the levels, I don't want to say are linear, but they're very straightforward. Not so much like the exploration that's akin to like Doom or Quake, but there's a timer, so you have to speed through them as fast as possible. And some people didn't really like that idea. It makes them like panic. But other people found it quite engaging. But people were talking about it as if it shouldn't be included in the boomer shooter genre, that it should be its own genre, because of how you deal with the levels versus something like a Doom or Quake. How do you feel about that conversation?
Yeah, I kind of like it. It's definitely its own subgenre because it's hyper focused on a particular like encounter you get with first person shooters. Where it's very rushed, very high tensioned and high stake, but it also has like this arcadey feel. So when people sort of throw it into the same mix of like Mad Mullet Jack and Post Void, it does fit this like subgenre of very fast paced, very concise arcadey shooters that are just full of like tension and fast movement and pushing players to move faster than they usually would, rather like in, a classic Half-Life game where you are exploring the level around. You're not just shooting everything on sight. Yeah, yeah. I think that's very valid.
So, in a game like this, you don't necessarily want the players to get lost and then hit a bunch of dead ends and burn to death. So how is it that you made sure that players were going to be able to see that the exit is relatively easy for them to find?
Yeah, so I think one thing that Post Void, not so much Mad Mullet Jack when I played that, has a problem with is players could get turned around and start going the opposite way. I definitely had that happen a lot in Post Void, and I found that the fire is a really nice way to keep track of, hey, danger's coming from that way, so the exit must be this way. I also put in some cute little details like on the doors and stuff. They've got like exit signs and stuff like that. Um, when I do the level generation as well, I make sure that if there is a pathway leading off to the side, I kind of limit it off so it doesn't go all the way to a dead end. And if it does just veer off the path just a little bit, it's not enough that it's a complete game end scenario. I do find that newer players do tend to get like a little bit lost straight away. So it's definitely like a skill they have to learn as they're playing. But yeah, uh, all
Uh,
all in the level gen, really.
Another thing that Cruel is going for is very strong aesthetics and tone. It's very grimy and dark, but also pretty goofy at moments. How did you know that was the tone and the aesthetic that you wanted to go for, and how did you acquire that?
So a lot of I love the aesthetics of the original Quake. I love the character design. I love how dinky everything feels. It feels like you're playing with like Warhammer figurines because they look small and kind of chunky. And I just find that style adorable. And a really chunky sort of 3D graphics as well. That sort of pixelation on it. I just love. So I definitely knew I wanted that. From the goofy perspective, my everyone knows this, but my favorite films are like Evil Dead. The very comedy hits horror sort of vibe. Because it doesn't sound like it works on paper, but it totally does. It totally works. Um, I think games shouldn't take themselves so seriously. You know, they're there to have fun and enjoyment, and Cool is just a goofy game where you're kicking people outside windows. Like, let's make it goofy. Let's make it fun.
So if I brought out like a plague marine, you'd be like, "That's cute."
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd go that far with the followers of Nurgle, but okay. How did you end up deciding? Because I think one of the attributes I saw a lot of people talking about is before you go in, the game's like, all right, type in who you want to kill, motherfucker.
Yeah, so I really struggled on the design of how should the game start. The in-between section as well, where you greet the dog, and the ending. They're the really hard bits that I refined a lot over game development. And one of my friends had an idea of a what if like you get asked a question like right at the start, and that text feeds into the level gen seed, like what kind of seed gets laid out for you. And I thought that's kind of cool. It happened very last moment, but I thought, wouldn't it be fun just to put in like, I know, your school bully or the boss you really hate or the ex-girlfriend or boyfriend that dumped you. Um, and then have that in like a death diary type thing. And it all just worked out really well. Like a comedy aspect of, oh yeah, I'm going to put in this person because I really don't like them. And then I'm going to play this game that, you could potentially share with other players. So, oh, you type in this name and you get this layout. And that just worked out really well. Very easy to do.
Is that why every time I died and restarted, it would be the same level?
Yes.
Gotcha. So the name, I did not know that affected the seed that made the world generate the way it is. Okay, that's really cool to know.
I didn't want to say to players explicitly, like, oh, yeah, when you type this in, it's going to be a seed for a level. I kind of wanted them to find out because they have that moment of finding out a gameplay feature and they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that.
There's also a lot of details scattered about the apartment complex that you're running about. Tell me what it was like to design a really grungy piece of shit apartment. That's something I would have rented if I still lived in Florida.
Um, I think for me it was, trying to figure out what's the best look for just a building that is just ruined and a little bit post-apocalyptic, and I think just trash everywhere, crap on the walls. Um, it was a little bit hard at first because I wanted a lot of detail in these buildings. What I ended up was writing some custom shaders to put some like damage on the wall decals and the floor, like parts of the floor are torn up and you can see the floorboards, and then part of the wall is chipped away and you can see the underlining brick. And that helped a lot. I did have a lot of fun doing like the little details, like if you get the chance to look closely at some of the details, I put in a bunch of little jokes in there. Like there's some soiled tidy whities on the floor at one point. There's lots of graffiti of my friends' names along the walls. Yeah, it's just fun stuff, really. Yeah,
The
it was definitely fun.
the detail that got me is when you die and restart, there will start appearing a sign that says "Employee of the Month," and it's whatever killed you. But I died to fire, so I would repeatedly see "Employee of the Month," and it's just a picture of the fire.
Yeah. So my original death screen, it would take a photo of the thing that killed you, kind of like how in Binding of Isaac has it. So they go, "Oh, this thing killed you," and it shows you the enemy. I did redo the death screen last because it was a little bit buggy, and I didn't get the chance to put that feature back in. But I always had the employee of the month thing still generated and thrown around, which I liked. Um, yeah, yeah, that's a fun detail. One of my friends recommended me that detail, and I was like, "Oh, I've got to put it in at this point. That's too funny."
And then another thing that really contributes to the game to get you in the mood to like I'm ready to fucking kick people out of windows is the fact that the music is fantastic. I don't know enough about music to describe the genre other than like dark electronic. What was it like working with the various artists I saw that were part of the game soundtrack?
Yeah, so I started off with Delancey Throne. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But he has a very like strange genre of music called, I think it's called witchcore or something like that.
Okay.
And he's made a bunch of tracks. Some I haven't yet actually put in the game. I'll be putting in a content update. Um, and the reviews were kind of a little bit mixed on that. When I put out like game clips and teasers, I mean, I love that sort of style of music, but a lot of people were like, "Oh, it's a bit screechy here," and I was a little bit worried it wasn't going to go down too well. And I also had a bunch of other artists come on board who really just wanted to add to the music and stuff. And so we've got the Silent Sphere Studios, and they went with very acid techno, which was awesome. Crypt Voice with their very synth wave stuff, and then Crisp with his Crisp track. I don't know how to describe it. He's got such a character to his tracks that I just call it Crisp genre. Um, and they all just gelled really well. I was quite impressed. I guess after listening to them all for like a year, I kind of get so used to them. But then hearing people say, "Oh no, this soundtrack's killer," brings a smile to my eyes. Uh, I'm glad I got them on board, and they were all great to work with.
So you didn't reach out to them. They just saw your Twitter post and went like, "I want to make music for that."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, originally I was gonna take some time to learn how to do the music myself, but I just after listening to their music, I just thought, it's just gonna be easier just to pay them and get them on board. So I went with that. I'd like to do music at one point, but I just need to find the time, you know?
That's completely fair. So, where exactly does the game take place? What I've gathered is that maybe it's purgatory, and it's sort of a surreal setting because you're thrown in front of a cultist and then thrown into this building that's perpetually burning, and there's candles and cultists and spiders and monkeys and all kinds of horrors within the building. So, what exactly is the setting going on?
So I've kind of left this setting sort of open-ended. Um, and I get this question asked a lot, like, what is like the story or the lore? You know, who are you playing as? And I kind of want it to be interpreted as, oh, it's just you. You're the player. You're the guy who's doing the ritual. Um, the whole apartment itself is unexplained because I kind of wanted to be able to modify it in weird things in future updates and not have like a good explanation for it. So I guess the whole setting in Purgatory sort of matches up with what it is. Essentially, what I was thinking in my head was it's a ritual based in hell, but it's sort of stylized in the sense of this decrepit apartment building complex. But then it leaves me room to imagine more environments for future instead of being confined to just that apartment. Um, so in my upcoming updates and stuff, I plan to have like train levels. I plan to have a nightclub level, different sort of places to take you instead of just being set in this apartment complex.
And then Cruel also has a mechanic I don't think I've seen before, which is the gambling mechanic. So a lot of times when I play like these roguelikes or run like games, I'll reach a spot where it's like I'll start my next run at 2 HP. I'm pretty much guaranteed to die, which sucks. But in between levels, you can gamble, where you can get like almost like a 50-50 whether you'll get a health pickup or it's an insta kill, which I was probably going to die anyway. So, what was the idea behind why you wanted to go for that?
So originally, I was always going to have like a shop at the end of the level, um, where you can sort of just pay for your cans to buy certain upgrades. But my thinking was that if players couldn't collect cans, or they missed one, or they used them for health, and they didn't want to miss out on a perk, they could always just take a gamble in that scenario. It didn't turn out the way I intended, because I think people sort of saw it as like a thing you have to do, rather than it's being a very optional, spur of the moment. Oh, I'm in a really bad situation. I'm on floor 4 and I don't have any upgrades and I'm nearly dead. I might as well just gamble it away and risk my run. Uh, but some players did get the idea behind the cans. Interestingly enough, it's not an instant kill. If you have enough health, you can actually survive an encounter with Eric. Um, it was interesting seeing some players use the gambling to acquire more cans, so they can actually choose which perks to get for specific builds. But a lot of people just saw it as an opportunity to go, funny moment. Will I die? Will I not? Who knows?
And
The really funny thing about the gambling mechanic is it is true 50-50. Um, so a lot of people do complain it's outright broken because they keep dying to it or they keep getting cans. And usually when gamble mechanics are put like that in games, usually they're offset just to make them seem more favorable towards the player because no one actually likes losing. So usually it's about 60-40 or 70-30 just to coax the player into gambling a little bit more. But no, I went brutal for the 50-50. Uh, so you have no idea what to get.
you also went brutal with Eric. You scared the shit out of me. What's going? Who the fuck is Eric?
Eric is like our friend, who we've decided we're gonna just stick his face in all of our games. Um, Originally, I was gonna have this little arcade cabinet, and you could play this little platformer. And when you died, it would say "in loving memory of Eric Mouseboy." Um, but everyone thought it was just crap and boring. But I wanted to keep Eric in, so I just made him the monster of the gambling game instead.
So you had also had you were talking about how some players were getting extra cans for builds. So why don't you tell me about those builds? When you were coming up with powers, were you thinking about like, oh, I want this power up or this upgrade to synergize with this upgrade for this path, or is it just kind of like, here's what I'll make and I'll see what players can do with it?
Uh, it was, yeah, I kind of dropped the ball on the upgrades, I feel. Like looking back on what I've currently got versus what I could have, I think I felt the upgrades were just passive buffs. they were just like, oh yes, and then there's some silly ones like the farting one or the squatting to regain health. Um, so I wasn't expecting people to take them so seriously in thinking, oh, I'm going to make a specific build. I'm going to hold 6 cans, so every time I go to gamble, I can pick exactly what sort of perks I have. Um, I think I dropped the ball because they don't intertwine very well, or they're all just good no matter what. There's no negative side to them. So I've been sort of toying with the idea of going back and reworking a bunch of the upgrades so they do start to intertwine with each other, uh, and put loads more in. Um, but yeah, I wasn't so happy with the upgrades that I put in. I just thought, what's a sensible upgrade to have in the game? What feels good enough, rather than thinking a little bit more about the overall game of it being like a roguelike. Uh, yeah.
I think the only reason I won was because the build I went for was just max ammo drops. I made the shotgun a six shooter, and I had fast reloads.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the best ones. So at the moment, there's the broken one with the squatting to heal. Everyone just gets that to get more health. But yeah, or there's the just grab all the ammo and have the max clips, etc. Um, yeah.
So we have there's the Eric, the exit, and at the end of the level, there's also a dog. It is a tiny Pomeranian, and it seems to be addicted to fucking Coca-Cola, which is why you're collecting cans. What was the reason you wanted to basically have the end screen be what it is?
Yeah, so originally the dog was gonna greet you, and then walk you through the level, and the idea that the dog was evil and it was like setting fire to these levels. Uh, I originally had the entry level as like this hotel lobby, and the dog would be sitting there, but if you peeked behind the dog, you'd just see this gas can. Um, but I kind of wanted to have the whole idea of, no, you're summoning a demon to perform a ritual to kill the person. So then I had to just intertwine that figure as a person. I didn't really know how to suggest that, oh, this thing is this person and you're going to kill it. So I just said, oh, stuff it. I'll just put their soul into the body. um, there was a lot of ideas that I had with the dog that I kind of threw out, that you can kind of see remains of. Um, like originally, I wanted like a good ending and bad ending depending on if you fed the dog, but then I scrapped that in favor of, oh, I think it should be a moral action of the player of getting right to the end and deciding, oh, do I really actually want to kill this person who's been helping me out all this time by giving me upgrades and it's cute, or do I really hate this person and I really do want to kill them?
I came to that moral conclusion when I named it America, and I got to the end, and it was like, hey, it's me, the dog, America. And I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
do I have to kill the dog to unlock the other game modes?
Yeah, so originally only did have one game mode in it, and that was the base game mode, but I put a couple in them, more challenges in just in place. The idea is that if you do save the dog, it counts as a save, not so much as a killed aspect, but to unlock more rituals, which you're pleasing the demon by killing the dog. Um, he'll grant you more rituals. But if you save the dog, you're choosing to save the person, and then you can play the same level again if you really wanted to. Because as soon as you kill someone, it puts their name in a death diary, which is your saved game data, and you can't play the level anymore because you have killed that person.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I got. It took me a while to beat the game. I at one point was like, I can't. I'm not gonna beat level 2, and then I eventually last night before I went to bed beat it. And I was like, I can't kill the dog. I can't do it. I can't kick this stupid little shit.
Yeah, yeah. If you save in future, I'm going to put in unlockables. So if you do save the dog, you do get somewhat of a reward. Because I feel that players who saved dog were expecting something. Um, and I feel a bit let down of, oh no, it's just nothing. You could just play the level again. But I'm thinking, oh, there could be further unlocks like cosmetic upgrades and stuff you can get from saving the dog. But that'll come in future updates.
All right, so when you were designing Cruel, I guess I would say that killing the dog to progress would fit within the theme of having to be cruel.
Yeah, yeah, totally. You kick the dog off a roof.
So it's
You
thematically
think
true, I
that?
suppose.
Yeah, yeah. I I was curious about the dilemma of, oh, with dog lovers who want to play this game, they just wouldn't want to kick that dog off the roof, so they would always pick save. But knowing that if that dog was a representation of like someone they really hated, like it's putting that moral choice in. I didn't think it would have so much of an effect, but it seems to.
But
Um,
the dog is also like, hey, I just wanted to help you. Sorry. Like, oh, I feel bad now. Like, you worked my way up here. But I like if I spare the dog, the demon's like, you asshole, you didn't finish the job.
yeah, the dog has like multiple sayings. So it just picks a random list of words for it to talk back to you at. So sometimes the dog can be really mean and sort of egg you on a little bit to kick it off the roof. And sometimes it can be like, oh, I'm scared and stuff. Really play on the emotions.
I do.
Just before release, actually, I used to have a web server in place. So if you spared the dog, you'd be able to type in a message for the dog to say to other players, just before you had the choice of killing or sparing it. But the problem I had was a lot of people were just like, this system's going to get abused. You're going to get, racial slurs and that put in, and you've got no control over that. And I thought, oh yeah, I don't want to experience of people getting to the end of the game and just something hateful comes up. So I
I
quickly
mean,
picked that out.
I'd be more inclined to kick the dog if it was racist.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
If I got up there and I was like, wow, that came out of Django Unchained, that was horrific. Like, I'd be more inclined to kick the dog.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Is
I
this the
also
soul
thought
of Robert
about
E. Lee? What's going on?
another thing I was thinking is, oh, people might put like people's identities and stuff like that in, and that just leaves me open for a lot of legal trouble. So I definitely took it out
You
for
wouldn't
the
want
better.
someone to get doxxed through the game cruel.
Yeah, exactly.
The dog
I
just
just thought,
spits out a social security and an IP address.
yeah, exactly. Call this person. Um, yeah, I mean, there's stuff I could have done, like profanity filters and things like that, but I just thought, nah, it's not worth it at the end of the day. I'll just put some catchphrases in instead.
So, cruel is kind of mechanically dense. You have the melee weapons that you can throw or use. You have, of course, the three weapons that you run through. If you pick up the power up, you heal if you kick people out of windows, or as I like to say, defenestration. Um,
Yeah.
There's also it's easier to dodge enemies because when you move left and right, your character leans as they move. So did you have a lot of these mechanics like from the get go, or is this something that you thought needed to be added as you played? Like, oh, you know what would be cool if something got too close to you, you could kick it away.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was experimentation. So I got the level gen working quite early on. And then as I was putting in the enemies, it became more apparent of, oh, how do I make this combat loop seem quite effective? What can I put in to sort of emulate this whole idea that you're dancing around these enemies? Um, a good friend of mine said it is like Dance Dance Revolution, but it's an FPS game because there's certain moves you need to perform when you see enemies. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly what I was going for. Sort of playing this dance throughout a level, dodging, kicking, parrying shots from enemies, um, and it all kind of it came together right at the end when I put the melee system in. So you pick up melee weapons and you use them to parry, and then they break, and then you can chuck them and stuff. It Once I put that in, it all just made sense, and I was like, yeah, this game's cool. It works really well.
So, what about the combo system that's tacked on? Because there's also power ups with the combo system, but that's also just is it like a high score thing that you wanted? Is that why you wanted to add it?
Yeah, so I got the idea from Beat Saber. So you've got a little combo meter at the top right of how many blocks you've hit in succession. And Cruel doesn't have any form of score or anything like that in. Um, but I liked the idea of you having some sort of meter to say, hey, you're doing really well. You haven't been hit once for this many kills that you've done. And it was just so easy to implement that when I did it, players just started enjoying the game much more. Like the more advanced players who get insane combos. Um, so there wasn't necessarily like a game design element to it. It was more just I've put this in and people are really enjoying it. It's amazing what just a simple counter can do on a very high skill based game. Uh,
Well, I know.
Ideally, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say I know how well my run is doing. Depending if I beat the level and I see combo two, I'm like that was trash.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen some people get combos over like 500, and I'm like,
Oh
what?
Christ on a bike! What the fuck?
Yeah. Um,
I was happy with like my 48.
yeah, well, the last game mode that you unlock is just a one hit. You start with just 1 HP. So I think when the more advanced players get to that, they sort of start playing the game and not getting hit and really learning the moves of all the enemies and sort of refining their skills. So they end up with just insane combos, um, which I enjoy. I can't do. I'm not that great. uh, but it is nice to see them really putting in the effort.
So, what was it like designing the enemies to almost have like different roles or functions for your levels?
Yeah, it's pretty neat. Um, the enemies some I definitely had a lot of experimentation with different enemy designs um over the year, and I put out a lot of clips that show off these different enemies, and a lot of people are pointing at these clips and saying, hey, where's this enemy? And I was like, oh, it didn't really work out that well, and I replaced it with this. which fits the games much better. But I wanted enough variation that you have to learn different move sets or different encounters mean different things. Like the spiders jumping onto the ceiling. The main design choice out of that is I wanted the player to look up sometimes.
Yeah, fuck you
That's
for
it.
that. That sucked.
Yeah. So you're playing the game and you're pointing forward the whole time, and now all of a sudden you have to start looking up.
But I would like a door would open. I'm like spider, and then it would pop on the roof, and I'm like, oh fuck me.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, but yeah, it's just simple little changes like that. Have such a big change on game feel. And switching stuff up. Um, I did try putting like this little rat enemy in, to make players look at the floor more, but I just found that was a little bit too much, so I did dial it back.
Well, it
But
does.
yeah, the oh sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say it works really well because you'll bust into you'll kick the door and run in and be like, okay, there's a ghost, ignore that, I can kick it. There's a shotgunner and a spider. The spider sucks the most, so aim for him and then run up and defenestrate the fucking shotgunner next level. And then I didn't calculate there was a mine in the center and I died.
Yeah, I do find it interesting as well that I've sort of hidden some tactics around, and I tell players about the tactics I use or how I've designed the things, and they go, "Oh, I didn't realize that. I'm gonna start doing that." So with the mines in the middle of the level, you can just crouch under them and they won't harm you. So you can start using them as weapons. So you just slide into them and they pop up and kill everything around you rather than killing you.
I did not know that either.
Yeah, I love this like exploration of game features that people don't know certain things, and then they find out and they go, "Oh yeah, that's actually pretty cool. I'm gonna do that."
I liked
Rather than
how
like painting, like and just saying, "Oh yeah, this thing, do this," because that's a bit like, oh, okay, it's just telling me how to play the game. I like players to find out these things for themselves and have their oh shit moments.
I really liked how enemies could knock into other enemies and take damage. So ghosts became a thing where it's just like, okay, I'll just kick someone into the ghost and that'll deal with him and potentially the enemy. Or my shotgun will like cut through the first guy who'll just knock over everyone else. And then because they're not shooting at me, it's like, oh, easy kills. I'll just roll out the pistol and just shoot them in the head.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. When I first released the game, a lot of people were complaining about the birds, and I accidentally released it with a bug that if you kicked enemies into the birds wouldn't register that at all. Um, so I didn't realize that the birds were just very, very annoying. Um, so I had to fix those up. I think I did about 3 nerfs to the birds after launch because people were complaining so much about them.
They are they are a little bit of a headache, especially at level 4, because you get one thing that's interesting is you get like used to how you're going to play the game. It's like, okay, I kick the door and there's just going to be like two enemies, and now it's like, oh, birds cannot only crash through windows but they fly and chase you. Okay, that's
Mm.
inconvenient, but they die if they hit you, so not the end of the world if you miss it. um but then you'll put the next level, there's hidden doors, so it's like, oh, is this an exit? And a dude walks out and it's like, that's not the exit.
Yeah, yeah, that was quite fun to put in. Um, Loads of people wanted like fake doors, etc., that you'll try and kick and they just wouldn't open and stuff. And I thought, oh, what if an enemy just like jumped out? Because I didn't like the whole. I know playing games like Silent Hill, for instance, when you walk about and there's so many locked doors. You also get that in Half-Life, too, quite a bit, where you're just walking around and there's a door you can't open, but they need to put it there because logically it makes sense to put a door there or have doors in the level that just can't open. Um, and I sort of changed that into more of a gameplay feature of, oh no, enemies will just jump out and fight you from these doors, rather than the player being frustrated trying to open a door that, you know, just cannot open.
I find it also gives me a little bit of like control in how I want to deal with an encounter. Because if I open a room and I see there's like a handful of doors, I'm thinking, okay, the enemies walk out slowly, so I can clear the room and then prepare for how I want to deal with the enemies. But my favorite is when they walk out because half the doors are bathrooms. So I just enjoy shotgunning them back into the bathroom and the toilet breaks at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Before launch, I had a bug where birds and monkeys would come out the toilets. So it'd be very strange. Actually, I think they're still in. Some Sometimes monkeys come out the toilet, and it's quite funny just to see a monkey running out the toilet.
Well, I
Um,
got. I nearly lost the run that I finished the game with because I was aiming for a cultist head when out the door came the fucking spider.
oh yeah.
So always a surprise. Um, did you struggle with thinking because it seems like every new level adds a new enemy. So you're slowly easing into is essentially the mayhem of the final level, which is suicide bombers, multiple different types of gunners, uh, basically a heavy tank enemy. How did you know what you wanted to add as each level progressed, and how you wanted, like, how would I put this? How did you know that level 4 was going to have like the shotgunner and not the spider, or how did you know level 8 was going to have the spider?
Usually with playtesting, I did mix around the levels quite a bit with which enemies would spawn, which traps would start spawning. Um, my original idea was, well, it'd get progressively harder because that's what majority of games do. They add in new challenges, and that's how you progress. Sit with the sense of, oh, I'm learning a new threat, and this is how I'm going to deal with this, and I'm getting the sense of progression because I can see there's more threats rather than just the environment changing. Um, but playtesting sort of helped me refine which enemy should come at certain points, what feels good. Um, I th I had some really for the level 2, I had the Clevis guy, the guy who runs at you with a melee weapon. Um, but playtesters were like, well, he doesn't actually add much to the encounters when he's by himself. He works better when there's more enemies around because he's more of a threat then rather than just by himself running at you because he's quite easy to shoot, because he gets nearer and nearer to you. So sort of through playtesting and finding out what works and what doesn't, um, that was where most of the design came from. Um, I think in later levels, things like the bombers and stuff, it kind of gets a bit less designed because most of the playtesting happened around up to level 7, and then after that, that's when the more advanced players were playing, but the people who weren't so good at FPS games never got to that point, so I can never get their feedback on how does this level perform, so I can tweak that to fit their needs. So it's a little bit lackluster on the later levels, but the earlier levels are quite well refined because of that.
Have you thought about adding a game mode that randomizes what enemies appear throughout the level, so players maybe hit level 1 and instead of cultists it's oops all monkeys?
Yeah, I did think about that. I wasn't sure how that would pan out because of things like the weapon progression. Because the weapon progression is set in stone of, oh, I get the shotgun at I think it's round 3.
3?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
round
think 3.
3 you get the shotgun, level 5 you get the Uzi. But if you had like randomized enemies, then you might get the harder enemies and then only get the shotgun and Uzi right at the end, like on level 9, level 10. So I thought,
Oh,
that's a bit. Um, so I decided against that. Pretty much because of that reason. Um, yeah.
that does make a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah.
How did you decide on the weapons that are in the game? It's like a trifecta. It's the Uzi, the shotgun, and the pistol. How did you roll on these three and only these three?
So I think uh I'm trying to think. So there's this roguelike game called Strafe that came out quite a while ago, and they present you with three starting weapons, but you can only pick one. It's like pick your Pokemon, Bulbasaur, Charmander, or Squirtle. And they've each got their different abilities. So one's super accurate but has a low shot count, and its fire rate is quite slow. There's a super fast shooting one, but um, it doesn't do that much damage. And then you've got the close quarter, but it doesn't work so well at far ranged, and it's very inaccurate. And I thought, oh, that sort of system works out pretty well for people's play styles. And there's certain enemies that are further away. There's enemies that get right up into your face. And then sometimes there's like a group of enemies that you just need to mow down and do a bit of crowd control on. So I found those weapons worked the best, and uh, I think if I started adding even more, then it would call for more enemy designs or more enemy encounters. So just keeping that inside the game loop, being quite concise, just worked very well. Um, so the revolver is like your pinpoint accurate workhorse weapon. The shotgun is great for just clearing enemies out of your face. And the Uzi, which you get later on, is great at just crowd control, either stunning enemies or shooting ghosts out the way. But then you can use up your ammo quite fast.
So I had mentioned about how both the crows and I think a different the ghosts, if they hit you, they die. And
Mm,
also with like stuff like the cultists or some of the enemies, and you just mentioned it, when they get shot, they get stunned. So you can kind of like, oh, there's a handful of cultists. I'll just back and forth like aim for the chest, so that way neither of them can shoot me.
yeah,
And in that regard, it gives me a little bit of control because especially towards the end, you walk into a room and there's 5 enemies. How do you allow the player to have a sense of control and not get completely overwhelmed when they're playing a game? Because I find the best FPS games, they give you a feeling of panic, but you have full capability of controlling what's in front of you.
I guess it's those little details such as being able to stun enemies and things like that don't sort of make themselves very apparent until you get right into the thick of it. Um, so busting down a door and having 5 enemies come at you, instead of having them overwhelm the player immediately, having some sort of sense that, oh, there's a way I can deal with this very quickly. I never wanted the player to be in a situation where there's way too many enemies, they don't have a get out clause. Um, they can do a set of moves to get out of that, but at the expenditure of some sort of resource. So, like, if you do get overwhelmed by like 5 enemies, let's say, um, and they're tough, they're hard to kill, you can just blow up one of your cans just to clear the way. But then you've used one of your cans as a resource. Um, just putting that sort of detail into the game kind of helps the player, I guess, learn that move set to go, oh, this is how I deal with this encounter. Um, yeah, I guess it was just me repeatedly playing the game and going, oh, yeah, no, if this happens, then the player's completely fucked. Let's try and make that not happen, or let's find a solution into how can the player overcome this obstacle.
So we're
The ben-
trapped. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
it's okay. Yeah, the benefit of Cruel is that it's quite concise. I mean, it's not doing anything that's too crazy with its level layout, or its enemies have particular attack moves. They aren't intelligent at all. So getting that sort of working out solutions to overcome situations was actually quite simple. Not hard at all to figure out and implement.
So were traps added also to help control the room, or is it just a way to fuck over the players?
I think traps were added in almost like to make the level seem more like an obstacle course. So it's to get the player moving around a little bit more. So the swinging axes were a way for when the level opens up a little bit more of having the player move around, but then also not having the freedom to cross over the room, etc. And the trip mines were basically put in to just to make the player jump. And then the lasers were there just to make the player slide. So it's kind of invoking an action required from the player just to get over that obstacle, and time it right as well.
It took me.
So sorry.
Oh,
There you go.
I was just gonna say it took me so long to realize you could jump over the claymores because I was panicking at one stage, had no health. I'm like, just get the fuck out the room, and I just jumped over the claymore and went, wait, that worked? Okay, I know how to save ammo going on.
Yeah. It's jumping over them, it's enemies flying into them, or just walking over them, or you could just shoot the claymore. Yeah. My favorite is the lasers because when I put those in, just watching the birds fly into them, it's just comical.
Oh, there
Just to see
was
them get zapped.
there was definitely moments where I kicked in the door and I was thinking, okay, too many enemies on the left. Ignore the shotgunner on the right. I'll deal with him afterwards. I kill everyone on the left, turn to my right, and he's just like Family Guy death pose because there's an axe in the room that killed him while I was busy. And I was like, oh, that worked out for me. Thank you.
Yeah, I've had people send me clips of the big chainsaw guys walking in a room directly into an axe, and then them being like, "Oh, yay, sick!"
I
That was
particularly
easy.
I particularly enjoyed when something sprinted at me, got hit by the claymore, didn't die, but got launched out the window.
Yeah. That's a funny moment when chain reactions happened and an enemy just flies out the window. The funniest moment for me is the fire that comes up behind you also sets enemies on fire, and they run around just screaming on fire. It's a detail that you can miss quite a bit, but enemies will always just get launched when they die. So I had this cultist running around on fire, and then he dies, but he launched himself out the window. It's just the funniest thing to see.
I noticed also if you try to turn back to the level that you were, it's almost like a stone wall appears to prevent enemies that you ran past from following you. So there's like a risk for reward for like just sprinting into the next room if you're overwhelmed because they might still shoot me in the back, but at least if I make it to the next room, they won't follow me.
Yeah. I also put that in just to restart the fire. So what I found was players could outrun the fire, and then the fire just would not be a threat. So then they would have more breathing room and they'll feel more relaxed. But making it so that the building collapses behind them and then the fire restarts to the player's position sort of resets that tension of, oh, the fire is still right behind me. I can't, you know, get so far out of the way that it just disappears completely. And it does also act as a way of, yeah, you could sprint out the room and not care about all the enemies you've left behind.
It's not that effective, but when you're panicking, it can save you. uh, I think that was my last question. I think I've covered everything in a nice, timely manner about Cruel that I really wanted to talk about. So at this point, James, is there anything that you want to shout out? Any links to like YouTube channels or portfolios? The game itself? I had one gentleman shout out a local pizza place.
Oh, I wish I had a local pizza place to shout out. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, but Cool is on Steam. Yeah, quite easy to find because it's this one word. I will be updating it in the nearby future to add more levels in and rework a bunch of the perks, etc. So I'm looking forward to getting that out and seeing how people get along with that. And yeah, that's it from me, really.
Alrighty, that about covers it. You can find this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and Podbean. I am on Twitter and Blue Sky if you want to say hello. And there also in the description will be my linktree where you can find my Ko-Fi, where if you want to donate to support the channel, it'd be a huge help. And I think that about covers everything, so until next time, bye!